And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Well, the debate over the legality of police body cameras is heating up. Supporters argue that the violent chaos that ensued following the shootings in Ferguson and Baltimore could have been avoided, or at least curbed, with the help of video footage from police body cameras. Advocates also say it would improve both transparency and accountability in police activities, protecting both sides. Critics, on the other hand, say body cameras infringe on a, quote, citizen's privacy rights, and question how much of what is recorded on the camera should be a matter of public record. And then, of course, there's the issue of cost. Many mayors and police chiefs argue it would cost millions to outfit each police officer in a given police force with a body camera. 165 police officers in Washington, D.C. will begin wearing body cameras mounted either on their shoulders or on their eyeglass frame, believe it or not, in an effort to increase trust between officers and D.C. citizens. The 6-month pilot program will cost about $1 million, a cost that D.C. Mayor Vincent Gray and Police Chief Kathy Lanier think is well worth it. So, question, Heather, is the cost worth it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that it's clear that we need more transparency, that we need to somehow get control of the situation between the police and the public and make sure that we're monitoring it for both sides.
What about the legal aspect?
Well, the legal questions are more interesting. If I remember correctly, in D.C., they've decided that these body cameras are going to be exempt from public record requests. So if you...
What does that mean?
Which it means that if the press, for example, asks for these body cameras, they're going to have to jump through some hoops to get them. They're not just going to get them automatically. And the same thing, in some states, in some cities, it's going to be people who are actually in the films will have access to them, but they're not allowed to give them away. But they're trying to figure all of this out. In Florida, you're going to have to go through all kinds of hoops to get it. In LA, I think that they're not going to allow them at all. So these are things that have to be decided because, you know, you've got to remember in these cameras, if you're wearing it on your glasses, everyone in your line of sight is now going to be on tape. So that's going to include victims. It's going to include innocent bystanders. It's going to include people who may be part of the investigation for the police. Remember, they use a lot of people who are informants. And so all of those things have to be weighed. Every time, technology is just ahead of the law here. And so we've got to make sure that it catches up.
Well, you know, I do a lot of video editing, and you can easily redact on video. You can blur faces. You can do a lot of things to make sure that informants and victims of violent crime are not identified. I don't think it's a good idea to have badge cams and then say, we're not going to show anybody, because then it's going to increase the suspicion that's already there. The whole idea is to be transparent. The whole idea is to say, hey, in Ferguson, we could have avoided all of that drama, all of the violence, all of the problems, because we would have seen exactly what happened. Not just at the convenience store, but where it started, but at the squad car where there was an altercation with a police officer. We would have seen whether Michael Brown was really raising his hands or whether he was charging at the officer. End of story. But you've got to release the tape. You've got to be completely transparent.
But before you go on and before you jump in, I got to know what you're editing at home exactly.
Well, ShaneUnshamed.com, videos for the voiceless.
It doesn't speak to the problem. I mean, you know, Heather has done a very deep dive on this topic in terms of the privacy issues and has a really good fix on it. So I pretty much agree with what she said on both counts. The easy part of this is choosing whether or not we should have the cameras. I think we all agree it's a good idea. Maybe there's some out there who don't. I mean, I think
even
all of
police
us
agree that it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think for all the reasons we know it's a good idea. The privacy issues are very, very touchy, as Heather pointed out. Jan, I don't agree with you that it's simply a matter of blotting out faces, because then you are avoiding the very transparency that people are seeking. You give somebody from the press a video that's been altered in that way, you can give them the explanation, well, we were just trying to protect the innocent. The press is going to go, wait, we want transparency. We'll decide who's innocent and who isn't innocent. So you're putting a layer in there that will create more problems, I suspect.
Well, look, if you look at documents all the time, they're often redacted,
yes,
and that means that they've got little black marks through names and through other things you don't want to see. And this is just the video.
That you don't want to see, that the government doesn't want you to see.
I think that we need to work it out. In Seattle, they're doing exactly what you say. They have found a way through some hacker to be able to blur out everybody, and they put it on YouTube right away. In LA, the cops get to look at it before it goes out there in the public. I have a problem with that because it takes away this transparency idea, and it also allows them, if you're thinking that cops are bad, to come up with a defense. So there's going to be a period of time where we're going to figure out what works.
How do you keep a cop from blotting out a key witness? If that might be against that cop. by covering the face.
Yeah, masking is pretty easy. What I want to
Well,
know
if
is
you had
about
a rape victim, I just want to say, you definitely don't want to show that rape victim.
right,
No, you don't.
So there
Right,
are
it's
not always
circumstances
that easy.
where it would make perfect sense that I think the media would understand. And you have to be very selective about what you're going to blot out. And it would be rape victims or victims of violent crime and police informants, period, end of story.
But media will understand, depends on the media.
And people having affairs.
only
Well,
about 20
that's where it gets weird.
That's another good point.
sideways. So 20 seconds. I want to know about procedure real quick. If I'm a police officer, do I have to tell you that I'm taping you?
Depends on the state right now, but probably not, especially out in public. It's no reasonable expectation of privacy on the street.
Because
If they
there's
come
4
into your
states,
house.
right, where it has to be
11,
two.
I think it's 11 states.
where
I have to go back and check, but
it
I
has
think
to
it's
go 2
11
ways.
states. Yeah, but there's both parties to a taping have to consent.
Wow.
But for the most part, if you don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy, like on the street, anybody can see it. You don't have to worry.
Could you
about it.
imagine that? Like you jump into a violent situation, like before you do anything, I am taping this.
taping
Right. Coming up next, it's potluck time. Heather and Rick share their favorite stories. Don't go away.